call the meeting to order. If everyone please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you guys for coming out on this lovely evening. First on the agenda is roll call. Let the minutes show that all 5 board members are present. Next is the approval of the agenda. Kyle, discussions or questions? Is there a second? Second by Stacy. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Next is the informational items. First spotlight report will be the STLP, the student presentation for the state finals.
All right, well, thank you so much for letting us come out. We basically wanted to take this opportunity to recognize our students here who competed at state, as well as extend our thank you for you guys for supporting this program. This is a program that we asked you guys for funding for last year, which funded our 2 coaches here, and we've had a great year. And I put together this short little video. It's kind of hard to look at digital products without a screen, so I just did a quick little video so you can see what state was all about. Did it freeze up? Sorry, refresh. So just to catch you up, it was in Rough Arena. They had over 12,000 students from across the state, K through 12th grade. And KC was there, so of course they had the track and hat. And KC is one of our biggest partners for us here at the state. The roto dog that the high school brought that they're learning to program. And we've got some students here driving some of the robots. Some of the challenges here today. And these are groups set up by some various schools. Our students got to walk around and talk to high school and middle school and elementary schools from all over the state.
And these 3 right here in the front row are part of that project we just saw, the 3D design.
What are your guys' names?
I'm Will. This is
Will Honeycutt, Miller Sings, and Micah Napier.
Great job.
And they used Tinkercad to design that. Some of the objects come in a library of objects that they were able to drop into the design, but some they had to build from scratch, and so that's what you see there. There we go. So skip forward. There we go. So this is just a flyover tour of their 3D design. And in just a second, I think that the X-ray mode, so you kind of see all the different little pieces they had to they needed to view it. So it took quite a while for us to, there they are on the stage wrestling and accepting their award. All right, our next group of winners were stop motion animation. And I condensed their video down just to a couple of minutes.
Ultimate Lego makeup. So let's welcome our awesome contestants.
And this is Miss Kate.
And it took me a couple times watching this to realize that the cook on the left is using a wand and a cauldron. I thought that was kind of cool. I didn't notice that the first time I watched it, but I thought it was really cool.
Now that I have tasted and looked at your cakes, I will need a moment to think about who will win. I have made a very difficult decision, but I've made my choice. And the winner is Amy.
I think one of the coolest things about this project is Amy is actually a brand new student to our district from, is it Venezuela? Venezuela, spoke no English when she got here, and this group included her, and I'm so happy about that. She's really on your page. All right, and last we have our Fba Reports team.
We have Tegan and Taylor here representing that.
And they use zero indies, which use colored cards to do certain actions. Like a purple card might be spin around, yellow means go. They can probably tell you which cards do what. You can see that they built their set from scratch. They had bridges, underpasses. And so basically this competition, they have to write a story original, build an original set, then they have to make their robots basically act out the story as they're reading it. So that's what they're doing. So we just wanted to take a moment to, we have trophies that were given to us, and actually I wanted to have our board members come up in just a minute and kind of stand with our kids and get a quick picture so they can have that for their parents. We also have some certificates for them, so Tricia, do you want to hand those out?
All right, we have Miss Kate Hummel, Taylor Konechny.
And then-
Sorry, I keep practicing. Tegan Apples, Will Honeycutt, Micah Napier, and Camilla. Let's see.
And we actually wanted two of the kids to come up and just talk real briefly about two minutes about kind of their experience. Do you want to come on up first? And just kind of like what the year was like for you, or anything you'd like to tell them about your experience.
My name is Kate Hummel. I was in second grade. I did study motion image by water and a tripod from the series Prom. I'm my home, and Nina isn't good, unfortunately did not come. So we met it all the time, and then we set the tripod, we set the background, we set the Lego set that Nina got from the house.
work together. They just really, tried something, it didn't work, they tried something else, and they were all just, that was part of it. For me, that was fun to watch them just learn how to work as a group.
Yeah, they did a great job, and like they presented to us beforehand, because we had to choose one group that would represent us at state. And they did an amazing job, like taking direction and.
Yeah, we gave them some judging feedback, and they really did take it and run with it. You guys did an amazing job of going back and just really using that feedback we got, so.
And I will say their Spiro Indies were, actually, I was able to purchase those with wave grant money. So it was pretty awesome that they were able to use that. And it was neat because some of their judges had never seen them, had never seen the Indies
Yeah.
before. So it was a learning experience for the judges too.
Well, what does all your ribbons mean?
We just mean that I did all these stuff. For example, this was like taking a picture with a green screen in the background that was at a different place, so it was global collaborator.
So there are 6 kind of domains, and they each got a ribbon for going and doing an experience that covered that domain. And they got to attach it to their name tag as they walked around. Anything you guys want to add? All right, so yeah, I just want to thank you guys again. This was a great experience for us, great learning year, and we're looking forward to an even better year. So, you guys
I would like to, because they did not get a lead before the results were called for the Spirit Heroes. So if we could present them with their trophy, they haven't got to see it
They
yet.
haven't actually got to see it yet, have they? So
This is their moment.
So Spirit Hero Team, there is your trophy, if you want to come take a look at it. And we're gonna have you guys each hold your, so stop motion animation, let's have you hold that. And 3D design, let's have you guys hold that. And would you guys like for us to come over there, or do you want to come over this way? We'd love to get a picture with you guys. Right here, okay, let's head on over here.
We can get something after the picture. That's a lot.
We can just come to the middle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're ready.
Yeah, you guys just stand in a row there. You guys.
Good job, guys. Good job.
All right, coaches, you guys there and there. Give my Jason, make a picture too. Thank you.
Yeah, great job.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Congratulations!
I have one question. I thought the program was great. It's really exciting. Is there anything that you would need or want to make next year even better in terms of this type of
So I feel like we have a lot of the hardware now that we need, robots. I know that we were looking at, probably I think our next organic step would be to probably come back and request to extend this to the middle school, so that as these kids move up through the system, that we add another stipend for positions in middle school to let them go even further. And I can see right now we have kind of a gap between that high school robotics team and now our STLP elementary. So we've got kind of that gap in the middle, so that would probably get me the next thing, is to continue this on.
I would love some Sierra Bolts, though, just saying. And you're just, you know, wish list.
I'm sorry, so what?
Sierra Bolts, they're like waterproof and everything. They're bigger, it's made by Sierra, but they're Sierra, sorry.
Can you send me an email with a hyperlink?
Sure,
On
yeah.
those? Okay.
And I'll share them with the middle school.
You'll be nice.
Well, thank you guys for taking the time to come and present it to us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
If the younger families want to exit and don't want to stay the whole time, this would be a great time. You're more than welcome to stay. We're glad to have you, but I also understand if you need to go, it's fine too. Okay, moving on to the next spotlight report. It's the state of the gifted and talented program.
I was informed I had to keep this. All right, so this is 2022 state of the gifted and talented program. Normally we do this in March, but it's, May. All right, so some basic regulations. I'm not going to read all of it. Gifted and talented broken into two different sectors. You have Preschool, which is primary talent pool. That's all informal identification that teachers do for their kids. Once they're identified for primary talent pool, they're in until the end of third grade. We screen our kids at the end of third grade for formal identification purposes because fourth grade is the start of formal ID in Kentucky. And once they're formally ID'd in fourth grade, they're ID'd until they graduate high school. So a little bit more on primary talent pool. One of the things about this is I've tried to stress over the 3 years I've been here that, if a student exits out of primary talent pool, it does not mean that they won't be identified later on, in the 5th or 6th or 7th, 8th grade years. They can always be identified. We have continual identification procedures with math testing, there are ways to use the ACT scores to identify kids in different domains. And some of the things about that I've done with primary talent pool, geared towards student interests and needs. So I try to cross a lot of things because I can literally, one of the great things about primary talent pool is I like to connect more or less things across content-wise. So if it's math, what I'm connected to language arts. One of my favorite assignments I usually do is more or less in the second grade year activity, and I know Mr. Hartman's daughter is obsessed with it, is I like to use an activity focused on science, but tied into the 90s movie Prom. So the students get, we talk about pollution and, how it affects the environment and everything, and then we tie it in with doing more or less a breakdown of the movie of Prom and talking about that as well. When it comes to formal identification, teachers fill out a specific nomination form in the fall and spring nomination windows. Students are screened once it's in return for general intellect, creativity, specific academic, which is language arts, math, science, and social studies. Students are nominated for leadership or visual performing arts, or is a portfolio process. For visual performing arts, there is an alternative to the portfolio process. We also have the audition as well, but the past 3 years we've used the portfolio setup because it cuts down the late nights of where we would have to do an audition, and a lot of our kids have been like in select bands, advanced arts. They've also been part of district honors and have also been like in the other school of arts. So for 5th through 8th grade, I pulled them during the Bearcat extension time. Some of the activities that we have done involve a lot more general intellect. I try to get them thinking outside of the box with things. We focused, one thing 6th grade got to do this year was we talked about the world of advertisements and how advertisements kind of entice you to buy certain things or do certain things. And they had to create their own advertisement presented to the class in order and try to entice them in their classmates to purchase those items. 9th through 12th grade, we have a lot more opportunities with honors to credit AP courses. There's the Boone County Youth Cabinet, which you all got to see last month, Regional Youth Leadership, Young Women Lead, Young Men Lead, and the Chick-fil-A Leadership Academy, which hosted our first impact project that we got to do, which was our faculty and staff casual prom. So our current numbers, broken down, we have over, I believe it was, like for our high school, we had about 96, which is a bit of a dip due to COVID. Middle school was at 69 and the elementary was at about 80. One of the things about our numbers are they have, like our enrollment, they've gone up a little bit. They did drop briefly last year just because of COVID, because of nominations, but they really did pick up this year. So breaking it down by the numbers, we have 245 that are identified. This includes our third grade group, which does not exit out yet. They exit out at the end of the what would we consider this year. The fourth grade students that are in Discovery Art and Music that we have, they have been exited out. And then we have about 13 leadership nominees, which they have to complete a portfolio. It's a year-long process for them. So one of the good things about our nominations, I took our nomination forms that we had, which were basically they were set up through Microsoft Word and put them into a Google form. And if you notice, my first year here we had 46 nominations, second year we had 52. This year we had 114, and that's technically wrong, that's actually 115. I got one like the last day of school. So it was a very busy year. The nominations by grade level, one of the great things that I've gotten to see in the past 3 years is that we've had a lot of teachers who are willing to go that extra mile to fill out the nomination form. Because sometimes it can be kind of a bear, and then I'm usually asking them for this data point, this checklist, that checklist. But they've all tolerated me fairly well. So some of the changes, like I said, the nomination forms were done online. I've also converted the parent surveys, the GSSP announcements, and consents are also sent out via email now. I do follow up if I don't get things returned from parents because I do like to have that consent form. One of the things about the GSSPs, they're done annually. They're more or less similar to like what you would consider with an IEP, where I've just listed information from parents. I've also done that also online as well, so it's cut down on the amount of meetings and also the amount of headhunting that I sometimes have to do with some teachers, because now I can just send it out. The ones that return it, I get it back, and then the ones that I have to specifically hunt down, I will hunt down. And then there's a few pictures of things that occurred this past year. This was our third grade primary town hall class. We did a scale model of the solar system where we more or less measured out the distance of the solar system, or each planet from the sun, and used yarn to kind of draw that distance. Some of our kids from the Chick-fil-A Leadership Academy featuring Cal. This was our faculty staff casual prom, which from what I gathered was a pretty good hit. Our middle school kids were at the Science Time Pixar at Union Terminal. This was at Dreamfest. Our Boone County Youth Cabinet kids. This was our first graders working on some, I believe it was their community projects. They got to learn a little bit about the differences between rural and urban and suburban communities. And this was from our Cincinnati Conservatory of Music event at Highlands High School this past year with our middle school music kids. But, that's basically to sum up my presentation. I got to complete year 3, I believe. Get to come back for another year, and I'm excited. This has been great, a great place and everything. But, my big thing for you all is, do you all have any questions for me?
I just kind of have a comment. I find it interesting on slide 9, your nominations by grade level. 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th are 0 for the past 3 years.
And normally in high school, you don't see a whole lot of nominations because a lot of the kids are already in their honors, AP, and dual credit classes. And typically we see more nominations from the earlier, so that's usually when you see those standouts. When they get into those honors dual credits, it's kind of hard to really specifically stand out in one of those higher end classes.
Not that they couldn't, though.
Not that they couldn't, no. My nominations are open to any teacher, K through 12.
Yeah.
And they know, because I send out calendar invites for, to all the teachers with the information for the nominations. And I also do kind of remind teachers that, hey, nomination window's open, hey, nomination window's open. And that's basically how I've gone about trying to strictly say, hey, you've got a strictly big standout, please send them. One of the things that we've been trying to do, or try to identify more of, has been our visual performing arts kids, who's COVID really kicked us back on that, because we had some higher numbers, but they kind of tried to wait it out. So that's been one thing I've been trying to work on.
Do we do any kind of targeted marketing to the high school kids, to the teachers at 9 through 12? Do we do any specific focus targeting on reminding them that that's a program that's available?
With the teachers, in terms of like nominations, it's basically been the email process. I do meet with teachers from their PLCs. High school has basically been, I think I've met with them at least once each quarter, just to kind of mention that, hey, this is an available program. I have had some kids who, asked about self-nomination, which I basically tell them, here's the self-nomination piece. It's been more prominent with my middle school kids because they see me daily. The downside is the high school kids don't see me daily unless they're in, youth cabinet or RYL, which those are all, youth cabinet, RYL, and Chick-fil-A leadership cabinet are open to kids that are not in the GT program. And I try to entice the ones that, especially have that leadership capability, that leadership potential, be like, hey, let me talk with you, let me meet with you, and we'll see what we can do maybe about getting you identified. And, one of the things that I've tried to do as well is focus a lot on with GAC and CRACT as well, to try to get maybe the kids that might benefit from going there, and then maybe we can also get them nominated as well to join the GT program.
One other question. What's the participation like on the parent surveys? Is that a high percentage of responses?
This past year was a little bit lower. The first year, I want to say this past year was about, out of 240 kids or so, I think we had about a 55% participation rate. The first year, it was paper, pencil, and I don't have those numbers. The second year, the first year during the end of the year, we had a fairly decent participation number because everybody was on lockdown. So it was a little bit higher than that, but we've averaged about 50, 55. And of course, the one thing about the end of year survey is it's more or less hard to get everything done at the end of the year. That's why, and I even sent out a little bit earlier this year to try to entice people to, get those done. But that's been the one thing, and I don't have time to send out the mailing ones, especially since I've sent out nomination, like consent forms within the last week of school, and they've come back literally like 3 weeks later, because I guess the mail's been running slower.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, appreciate your time. Thanks. Next is the principal's reports.
Good evening. So for mine, I got a couple tables that I shared with you all on the results of our spring map and Ames Web window. And if you take a look at that first one, where it says map of fall spring, and below that has Ames Web, the highlight of that I want to point out is just that increase in percentile ranks. So for instance, as a school, our students came in reading on average around the 56th percentile, 56.3, they're reading at 59.5, so that is an increase just in terms of national ranking where they are. It's a 5.7% increase. And then there's that conditional growth percentile metric that you won't hear me talk about so much. 50 being the expected growth that we would have. The farther you get away from that in either direction, it's either better or worse growth. So as a school for reading, we were looking at 55.4. I was very pleased with that. Math, we had similar results as a total percentile change of 4.6% with a conditional growth percentile as a school at 57%. Below that, you'll see the Ames Web report. I'm still figuring out how to get school-wide reports from that program. when you look at some of the percentile jumps, kindergarten, we only do winter to spring, we do not do that in the fall. But a 47% change in our percentile ranking in reading, and 27% change in math for our percentile ranking is pretty significant. But when I look at that percentile ranking in reading, where it says a 93.1, I'm not exactly sure how to interpret that yet at this point. That is extremely high, and I think our teachers do an absolutely phenomenal job. As a mathematician or a former math teacher, I'm like, that's a really, really high percentile number. So I'm still figuring out that program, but I will say that the student growth percentile number I feel pretty good about in both of those grade levels. In first grade, you can see we had a huge jump in reading, and really the percentile change was significant on that, over 200%, but that student growth percentile, where it's the metric that is measuring how much those kids grow. We threw so much behind in our first grade this year through the help of our specialist teachers at the beginning of the year. You all approved our position to hire Megan Drake, our first grade instructional assistant, and that's how she's spending most of her time. And so we're seeing that show up. As an elementary principal, I think the most critical thing we do is make sure our first graders are reading as best as we can get them prepared. So we do a lot of important things, but in my mind, that is critical for these students moving forward in their education. On that next page, that's just kind of comparing some of the years. You'll notice that our RIT scores and percentiles have been fairly consistent. We've kind of returned to where we've been. The growth numbers from last year were not quite as high, but I do think that is partly due to just where we are in the timing of the pandemic. So we're going back to the growth numbers that were a little bit more general for us, going all the way back to 18-19. Compared to what we've done before. I will say that second grade reading percentile number at 66, or conditional growth percentile, was something that is very significant to me. And that is also another grade level that we put a heavy emphasis on. They lost, that last quarter of the year, the kindergarten year, which is important. And we had some ground to gain. I think our teachers have done an absolutely fantastic job. So that's really all I have. Do you all have any questions for me?
Do you have thoughts on why the third and fourth grade percentile growth was so small as compared to the second grade? I know you said you focused more on second grade, but in both in absolute numbers and in terms of growth.
Sure, yeah. I have not dove in super deep on what they're using for their studies. I know in 2020 they redid them, so they came out with new ones to base what their percentile numbers are. I do know this though, as the kids get older, if you look at the curves that map develops and how they grow on their RITs, so as you're going, it goes like this, and as they get older, they kind of start leveling out. And so the kids cluster more in the middle, if that makes sense. So you might see larger swings in first, second grade, but as the kids get older, especially when they get up into middle school, the growth of a student as a reader, when they get to, fourth, fifth, sixth grade, they're not that far from where they're going to kind of cap out as a reader as a K-12 student versus, the difference between a first grade reader, a second grade reader, and a fifth grade reader. That's quite a jump. That's my guess. Again, I haven't jumped into their study as to where they came up with those percentile rankings. I do know they updated them in 2020. The ones that we were using a couple years ago were from 2015. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Good evening. Nice to have our spring math data. Gave you a couple charts there on the actual report. Comparing spring of last year to spring of this year, which is the actual full cycle, we'll look at it as a growth over a year. And color code these in green in the areas where we were meeting or exceeding the expected numbers. And as the years gone on, some of these areas have gotten green that weren't green earlier. So I think the growth is a pretty positive thing here. Especially when you look over at the free and reduced and our special ed growth, while their rates aren't where they need to be, in fact, they're making that much growth is pretty significant now too. So you can see where we're not quite making the growth. There's a lot of growth to make. That fifth grade year had a lot more growth than the other years, and but we were making, in reading there, you can see that we met, exceeded the norm writ with 4.1 points of average growth for our fifth graders. So as it was in the beginning here, it showed that our younger kids are struggling a little more than our older kids still, but I think that growth has been more significant than it was earlier in the year. The bottom chart shows some of what I just call our specialty classes. We had a reading section at each grade level. We made the classes smaller. Those were the ones that our ELA specialist was teaching. And you can look at the growth numbers there. And the RIDs aren't that far off for 6, 7, 8 to the norm RID. So these were some of the kids we felt like we could make the most growth with if we put them in a smaller class. That teacher focused on a couple of other strategies to get some of our lower readers to get some growth, and their growth numbers were pretty significant. We had our advanced math curriculum this year for the first time at all grade levels, and sometimes those higher level kids, they start to hit a ceiling, but you can see that we, in those growth numbers, there was some significant growth with those kids. And same with our algebra students in 7th and 8th grade. And that advanced math group, that 8th grade group, is our geometry group. So even they're well above the expected growth. So sometimes you don't see as much growth with those top kids, and that's one of the things that we want to see with producing that advanced math curriculum is the growth we can get. Can we keep pushing them as well? And the growth numbers for math show that we were able to do that. And then I also gave you the Fba Reports, and sorry, they're sideways up there. Basically, the diamond in each one is where their growth should be, and the actual blue bar graph is where they were. And like on 5th grade reading, while that looks like it's a significant gap, it's just 2 points. It was 4.1 points of growth, and it should have had 6. And same on the math. But the conditional growth index for reading as a school was about 53rd percentile, and for math was 54th percentile. So overall, we're in that area where we should be. So I felt pretty good about this coming out of the pandemic. We made a lot of progress. Shows we still got a couple areas to work on. Breaking down the individual data, which I didn't give that whole big chart to you. Still in math, we see a significant number in apprentice, but it's better than it was 12 months ago and 9 months ago, where we were seeing 60 and 70 kids in that apprentice area. We're down into the 50s and 60s, so we were making some growth in that math area, still focusing on those apprentice kids to get them to proficient, because we have seen that over the last 18 months. There's a big chunk of kids stuck in apprentice on math based on our math scores, but it has decreased throughout the course of the last 12 months. That's pretty much all I've got. Questions?
Nope. Thank you.
Good evening. First, thanks to the board members for attending our graduation ceremony last week. Appreciate it. I know that's time out of your schedule, but it makes for a nice presentation for our seniors, so I appreciate it. Thank you. A little summary of what took place at the high school this year for you, a little different data report for us this time around. So, Walton Verona High School, with our standard 27 credit diploma, we had 145 students earn a 27 credit diploma. For the state minimum 22 credit diploma, we had 13 students earn that. We had 1 student receive the alternative diploma. As a class as a whole, the seniors that just graduated, $2.2 million in scholarships. That is impressive, very impressive. And you start to see some of those numbers, and you see like a service academy, that's included in there. That's $450,000. We didn't have that this year. This is just straight, 4-year universities, and that's an impressive chunk of change for our seniors. 75.8% 8% was the final number of students that graduated college, career, or college and career ready. And again, they do that through the industry certification, the end-of-program testing. They do that through the Coyote testing. They do that through the ACT benchmark scores. So a good showing from there. You remember me standing before you at the start of that, we were under 50%. And that was a fallout of the juniors not being allowed to take those end-of-program tests last year at the direction of KDE. So we made some significant progress in one of our math intervention classes for our seniors. One teacher had 9 kids pass the test in a day. And that took place right before school ended, and that's big. That's huge for us. If we usually get 2 or 3 out of that section to pass that test, we had 9 in the one teacher's class. So there's the highest overall, so not just their junior ACT, but the kids that go back and take the ACT multiple times. We track their highest score. This is internal data. You'll see some numbers come out from ACT that'll be a little bit different, but from tracking our internal data, you can see that our final highest composite average ACT score for our seniors was a 20.63. In there, I included a couple years of history data in there for you to look at. The one thing that I think, and I will continue to brag on our school as long as I am in this position, is what we do with our dual credit opportunities for our students. And I know we'll stand up here and talk about different important and impressive titles the district can earn, and get you some plaques on the wall. But one of those things never takes into account your dual credit participation. And our students in our community thrive in after high school placement because of our dual credit. So for the class of 2022, we had students enrolled at a multitude of institutions. We had 42 students get dual credit in psychology, 9 in leadership, 5 in public speaking, 14 in race and gender, 40 in financial success. That's one Mr. Sandlin teaches in the morning. He is a legend in that class. We had 23 students participate in English 101, 37 students in English 102. 101 is the junior level, 102 is the senior level. And then we had 15 students participate in some other NKU class that we didn't offer. So whether they were driving to NKU or taking it at night or doing an online class on their own, that's kind of like an ad hoc thing that they kind of set up with Ms. Hester to do with them by themselves. We had 41 students participate in Math 115, which is that college algebra class. And we had 17 students taking classes at Gateway. So this is very likely kids that wanted to go to the vocational school, didn't get one of those coveted spots. So we've set up individual pathways for them at Gateway for them to attend, usually night classes for those programs to go to Gateway at night and earn those credits. We had students enroll in 291 different enrollments of dual credit, earning 903 credits. And that is the difference between bigger student loans or paying more out of pocket for our kids to graduate college. So I will continue to advocate for our dual credit program here, and what we are setting our kids up with the potential for success in the post-secondary route is credible. There you can see our GPA. For the 12th grade students graduating, our seniors that graduated, 76% had a 3.0 or higher. And we had, we gave out those 4.0 awards. 29 students up there, I think, on that platform graduated high school with a 4.0. Not just as a senior, but 4.0 collectively for their 4 years. And that is pretty impressive when you look at, again, those same kids are graduating 4.0s and taking these 3, 4, 5 dual credit classes a year. So that is pretty good. Our 10th grade, just want to spotlight them. Our 10th grade class is really strong academically. 81, almost 82% of the class has a 3.0 after 2 years of school. And their ACT scores are phenomenal, the growth they showed from the freshman year, and they outpaced the previous sophomore class. So really thrilled with what the students are achieving up there. just thought we put this in a little different format for you to digest this month. Any questions from the board? All right, thank you everyone, appreciate it.
Thanks, Natty.
Thank you.
All right, just have a few things to report from the preschool. We finished up the year here 1 week earlier than the rest of the schools. We did have a graduation program here, and it was really successful. The kids did a great job. It was, they put on a good show, I'll say that. So, we have 63 students from our preschool that are going to kindergarten. We have 41 right now that are going to be returning to our preschool. The last week of school here at the preschool, we did screenings. So we screened 55 students. And then they are here this week and next week for RTI. So they're getting interventions to then see if they need to continue through the process. So that's it. Do you guys have any questions about the preschool? Thank you.
All right. Our end of the year for the bridge program went pretty well. We had several more kids graduate. A couple of them joined us very late in the school year due to some unforeseen reasons, but we did manage to get the last couple of credits that were necessary for those people to graduate. So we were excited for them. And then one note from last time, there was a young lady who was on the cusp of graduating as of last board meeting, and she did finally finish up. So we're very glad for her as well. So overall, we had a very successful year, I felt. The teachers and administrators and I met on 6 different students who will be transitioning back to the school building, or middle school or the high school, whichever they were going back to. So leaving us only with, about 6 kids to start the year. So we did okay, I think, this year. And we've got hopes for the others that are there that they will at some point transition as well. But we're monitoring them closely and working with them. And feel like things are moving in a good direction there at this program. So any questions about that?
Attendance enrollment?
All right. Our month 9 ended about a week before school ended, and our attendance winner is changing hands. Sorry, high school, and it's going to the middle school. So with a 96.18 attendance personnel. So good job, guys. And next time we'll have month 10 all wrapped up, and our overall school winners crowned for the entire year. We do have a trophy, a traveling trophy for that as well. So good job to our schools with a 95.85 overall attendance rate for the year. Not bad, all things considered, with our, with the final gasps from the pandemic taking place this year. That we got through that okay, and next year starts another chapter though. If you've been kind of remember from earlier meetings, we kind of talked about this, that next year we go back to life as we once knew it, where attendance percentages translates directly to our new ADA. So, not saying we weren't taking it seriously the last couple of years, but next year it really does matter. So we hope for continued success in the attendance arena, which we have a long tradition of. So, any questions for me on month 9?
Thank you. Next is a construction report. Jeremy couldn't be here. He had a family event. So does anybody get a chance to look at it? Questions? All right, moving on to the administration procedures, chapter 3. Anybody have any questions, Dr. Baker?
Board members, as you're aware, we did chapter 1 and chapter 2 of these administrative procedures pre-pandemic, and this was kind of put on the back burner. Just as a reminder, this board has hundreds of policies that are divided into 10 chapters, and many of those policies say something like, the superintendent shall develop procedures to, whatever. And we are one of 5 districts in the state that has not adopted these administrative procedures that KSBA recommends. So we're taking these procedures one chapter at a time. Chapter 3 is the largest chapter because it deals with personnel. The first half of this chapter deals with certified personnel. The second half deals with classified personnel. And on the one hand, we wanted to adopt these KSBA recommended documents and procedures. On the other hand, we didn't want to reinvent the wheel if we already had something in place. So I met with Brittany and Tricia, and we went through these one at a time. And in places, we substituted our own procedure if we already had something in place that worked for us. But by and large, we adopted the KSBA recommended procedures. So after this meeting, Kate will send that list with the documents to KSBA, and it will appear on the KSBA webpage that you can access from our district webpage right under our procedures. So every month, we'll add a new chapter. And by the end of the year, we'll have all 10 chapters of administrative procedures in place.
Any questions? Moving on to personnel. Did everybody get a chance to look at that? I personally am excited about one of the elementary school additions, the second grade teacher coming back. I don't know if any of you guys remember her, but she was here probably, 10, 11 years ago. My son had her in second grade, and she's phenomenal. I think it's going to be a great addition to the second grade team, so glad to see that one back. Next is other. Dr. Raker, you start.
I have 2 things I would just like to briefly discuss. One is we're all aware of the terrible events that took place in Texas just a few days ago, and I just wanted to review with everyone, kind of for the record, things that we already have in place here to try to ensure the safest learning environment possible. We have bullet-resistant glass in all of our buildings. We have safety vestibules in all of our buildings where visitors have to be buzzed in. We have significant, and this board has dramatically increased the mental health services available to students. Thanks to a partnership with the Boone County Sheriff's Office, we currently have 2 fantastic school resource officers. We have one on each campus. We also offer a stop tip line where any student, staff member, or community member can anonymously report concerns that they may have. Our biggest tool, I believe, is our collaboration with the Kentucky Center for School Safety. Rob kind of heads our school safety initiative, but he collaborates with KCSS on a regular basis. And there are lots of folks around that purport themselves to be school security safety experts. But these folks with KCSS are the true experts. Many are former law enforcement, and they have significant additional training in school safety. And this can be a challenge because we want our schools to be hard on the outside and soft on the inside. What that means is they need to be difficult to penetrate for obvious reasons, but once you're inside, we want them to be welcoming and nurturing environments for our kids. So that's a tough balance to strike. And I just want to brag on Rob, our principals, our staff members. We have regular inspections by KCSS. We pass all of those inspections with flying colors, if not perfect scores. So that collaboration with KCSS, those drills that we perform, the visits and inspections are our biggest tool to provide the safest learning environment possible and working environment possible for our staff. The only other thing I have is just a personal observation. Everybody knows I had a son who just graduated, so I've had a lot of seniors in my house. A lot of kids just graduated. And while they're excited about what comes next in their lives, they're also sad because they hate to leave. And I'll never forget some things from this year. Our retiring staff members Danny Train's speech here a few weeks ago is the stuff of legend at this point. Peggy Schutzman working Wake Up Walton for years, and what a tremendous event that is for our community. Beth Dingus and Karen Rogers, last day, had very different, I think, emotions. Beth was hugging another teacher at the elementary with tears rolling down her face, and Karen was doing a bit of a victory dance. Kind of looked like she just won the Super Bowl, but they were all sad to leave. And then as the elementary students left our elementary school last week, there were probably 30 kids who were crying and hugging their teachers when they left because they hated to leave their teachers. If I didn't know anything about this district, that would be enough. The fact that our seniors hate to leave and our elementary students cry as they're leaving for a long summer, and our staff members on the one hand are elated, on the other hand, they're sad to go. I think that speaks volumes about this district. So just a personal observation I want to share.
Thank you. I have a couple of things in the other before we move on. Real quick, I just want to announce to everyone that Debbie Angel, she is here. She's waving to you now. She is running for the 61st Kentucky District Representative, so she's here, and she'll be around afterwards if anyone would like to talk to her. She'll be back at another meeting if anyone would like to be back this summer. Next is the Superintendent Evaluation. If the board members could mark that on their calendar for June 30th, we're going to do that at 6 o'clock. And we'll either be in the multipurpose room or in the board office. And then also for the policy of the 5.0 and 5.3 reviewing that we're doing, we're going to put that as June 11th. July 11th, my apologies. July 11th is a Tuesday, probably around 6 or 7 as well. We'll kind of determine that time at June.
I can't make that one, but
Okay. So there'll be 4 of us present, 5 at the 30th meeting. Okay. All right, so if I have that. All right, there. July 11th, it's Tuesday, yeah. June 30th is a Thursday.
July 11th is a Monday.
Oh, is it a Monday? I'm sorry, 12th then, 12th. 12th, my apologies. Stacy's that change here?
No.
No. Sorry about that, I looked at the date wrong. Okay, there are no speakers, so first we'll go into, what?
I had something.
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to take a second to address what I would call the elephant in the room. We have an individual who has sold their home in the district and has purchased a home in another district and continues to serve on this board. I'm not a lawyer, I don't have a legal opinion on this, but I do believe that one of the qualifications in order to serve on a board is to reside in the district for the citizens that you represent. So I would just encourage us to address that sooner rather than later.
I'd like to address it right now. I am still living in district, and I've already done my legal research, and I am absolutely qualified to still sit here. Thank you for bringing it up.
And can we confirm that?
Yes.
Yes.
I've talked to
Yes.
And that is not my role.
I took it upon myself.
I've consulted my attorney, and that is not my role.
I did my research. I am absolutely legal to sit here. I'm still living in my home. I did stipulations on my sale of my house so that I can still sit here and serve the community, which is a commitment I made. But thank you for making sure that I'm following the rules. I appreciate it.
And I have followed up with our attorney, but I have not heard back from the attorney.
Keep trying to preach it.
Anything else from the other? All right, moving into recommended board motions. First is the approval of the minutes.
I'll make it.
Well, this is, April 28th, sorry. Okay, I didn't see there was 2. April 28th for 2022. Kyle? Discussions or questions? Is there a second?
I'll make it.
Second by David, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Next is approval of the minutes from the May 12th, 2022.
Thank you.
First by Stacy. Discussions or questions? Is there a second? Second by Kyle, all in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Next is the superintendent's expense report. First by Kyle. Discussions or questions? Is there a second? Second by Stacy. All in favor? Motion. All opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-2. Next is approval of the treasurer's report.
I'll make it.
First by David. Discussions or questions? Is there a second?
I'll make it.
Second by Kyle. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Next is approval of the order of the treasurer for bills.
I'll make it.
First by Heather. Discussions or questions? Is there a second?
I'll make it.
Second by Kyle. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Next is approval of the 2022-2023 tentative budget.
I'll make it.
First by Kyle. Discussions or questions? Kevin, you want to talk about it?
Yeah. My normal presentation's pretty sorry we didn't have these handed out at a time, but I was having some printer issues. It was good too. So I sent this out to you last week and just kind of highlighted the changes from the draft budget that was passed in January to what we've done now. So a majority of those changes result from the pay increases that were passed, I believe, at the April meeting. 1.5% for certified, 2% for classified, in addition to some spot raises for some of those positions that we were behind our peer group, as well as some changes to some of the stipend positions. The only other, what I would call major increases is we're up about $35,000 in fuel expense for next year. We have budgeted, since the last time fuel prices were up, enough to cover, but they don't seem to be leveling off. It's still rising slightly. So I wanted to put enough money in the budget to accommodate for that. It's one of those, let's say they go to $7 a gallon. This won't be enough to cover it. We'll be able to deal with the change. You just can't budget an infinite amount for that, but we'll be fine. It's not, right now our fuel expense is, $125,000 a year. If it goes to 200, we're okay. Some of the changes to revenues to offset those things were increase in revenue in lieu of taxes, which that was included in the draft budget. We also have an increase from real estate assessments. Preliminary numbers look like we're going to have another increase from what we did last year, and we've kind of known that just based on the housing market. And then there was just an adjustment made at the top to our carryover to kind of balance that out. Other than that, not a lot has changed. Our contingency is still hovering around $800,000, about 5%, which is good. Personnel expenses, about 77%, and just over $12 million. Again, that's an increase, but we had step increases and benefit increases in addition to raise. And that number always will go up. That percentage, though, is what we kind of, 80% is kind of a high water mark that you want to stay below, and we're always kind of a few percent below that, which is a good thing. Any questions? I know it's exciting stuff.
Nope, thank you.
I will say the only thing that concerns me as far as budget next year is food service. The free lunch for all program has effectively ended unless there's a change, by the federal legislators. Nobody thinks that's going to happen. So our revenues are going to be down. Our expenses are also going to be down. So we just don't know what that's going to look like. I think if there's any kind of spot where you say, I don't know what's going to happen, that's it. For next year, we'll deal with it, as it comes. But the good news is our balance at the end of the year will be healthy because of the whole year has been on free programs. So if anything, we have to retool for the following year, but kind of a one caveat would say that, and this is not really in our control. We don't know how the general population is going to react to going back to paid lunches after they've been free for a year and a half, almost 2 years. So I think it's possible that more people we've had higher participation than ever. That people will continue to eat and just pay the money. I also think that you might have a knee-jerk reaction to, well, I'm not paying that, and it will go back to what it was before.
I know this time of year we typically talk about lunch balances that are owed, but since we're free, our numbers low there, and if we do have outstanding balances are reflecting.
So some of the outstanding balances that we have, there are I would say a few families that are high flyers on those, and those have not necessarily changed, and this didn't change that. They just, wherever they started the pandemic with, they haven't, and that's not something that's been
but moving forward, if
I would
pay.
actively work, yeah. So we're looking at that. Some people that are free and have been free, some of those things may not be collectible. Frankly, the ones that are not on free or reduced lunch, we're making attempts to get those brought current, but we have some people that just don't like to do it no matter what. So that's something that we work on annually. It's kind of fallen by the wayside with the pandemic just because, it's not, we're going to listen out people, making collection calls, when everybody's was kind of in the middle of trying to deal with that with grocery prices and everything in addition. But we're working on it. It's not significantly different than it was before. I will say we've had the advantage of that balance is not growing over the last 2 years, so that's a positive, but that will start back up. And we're going to make a push to get free reduced applications in early this year because most people didn't turn anything in since everyone was free this past year, and you've always had like a 30-day carryover into the beginning of the next school year to get your applications turned back in, but we don't have that now. If we didn't have an application for this year, they're not free on day one next year. There's no carryover there, so we have things ready to go. Now that we're out of school, we didn't want to muddy the water with the end of school and try to do that, but they were pushed over the summer to try to get those out and to get those back before school starts.
It might be worthwhile too to do some email and social media blasts as we get into early August, just to let everybody know in general, you have to pay for lunch this year.
That is a part of the plan, and it will happen before we get to August for sure.
Good.
Yeah.
We do have policies in place for those high flyers, right, as far as what they're allowed to do and participate in and all that.
I believe there are some things in the code of conduct that can be
Sports, dances, that kind of stuff. Any other questions for Kevin? Is there a second? Second by Stacy, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Next is approval of the 2022 policy update.
I'll make it.
First by David. Discussions or questions? Is there a second?
I'll make it.
Second by Heather. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. You didn't say anything. Okay, I said okay. Motion passes 5-0. Next is approval of code of conduct.
Aye.
First by Kyle. Discussions or questions? Is there a
Thanks
second?
for going through and making all the changes based on the last meeting.
Second by Stacy. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Next is approval of Boone County Imagination Library, MOU.
I'll make it.
First by David. Discussions or questions? Is there a second? Second by Kyle. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Next is approval of the emergency certification for a full-time high school foreign language teacher for the 2022-2023 school year. First by Stacy. Discussions or questions?
You have a little bit of background on the specifics of this need.
Yep, absolutely. I'll go back to 2008. As a high school principal, I had a fabulous Spanish teacher in my high school, and in order to attain full and complete certification, she had to pass a praxis exam. Now, I'll add that Kentucky has a higher minimum required passing score than any state that borders us. So this is not uncommon. This particular lady in my high school took the exam 3 times and couldn't pass it. At that time, you can qualify for an emergency certificate for 1 year and 1 year only. That year expired and she ended up going to another profession. So we have a Spanish teacher in our high school who is having trouble passing this exam. Now, I believe due to COVID, Brittany, correct me if I'm wrong, but due to COVID, people are eligible for more than one emergency certificate now. So you can do this twice, correct?
Because she had an emergency certificate for this school year, she is eligible to have another emergency certificate for next year.
Now, we had a vacant Spanish teacher this year that we hired. We had one applicant who had, how many other offers out?
I never got a final answer. She was quite good at the game.
So the good news is she chose us. She's going to work here, but what I'm saying is it is extremely difficult to find foreign language teachers now, Spanish teachers who can pass this exam. So I'm frustrated because this has been an issue at EPSB since 2008, and there's not any movement there to remedy this issue. And I think we're going to reach a point of critical mass where people just cannot find any foreign language. We're rapidly approaching that point where if you take a foreign language in a Kentucky high school, it's going to have to be on Rosetta Stone or something of that nature. So this is to allow this teacher to receive emergency certification for a second year while she continues to try to pass this exam.
Is this process exam applicable to all foreign languages?
Yes.
Have we considered as a district looking at broadening into other foreign languages such as French or something like that to get a wider group?
We have not discussed that, but that's certainly an option we can examine. Absolutely.
Any other questions? Is there a second?
I'll make
Stacy
it.
was the first. Second by Kyle, all in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Next is the approval to hire emergency subs for the 2022-2023 school year. First by Heather, discussions or questions? Is there a second?
I'll make it.
Second by Kyle, all in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Next is the approval of contract with occupational therapy services. Oh, I'm sorry, approval of the district-wide instructional resource teacher paid for with ESSER funds.
I'll make it.
First by Kyle, discussions or questions?
One thing I'd just like to say is I really appreciate the feedback that we got at the last meeting on this. I think that did help further highlight some broader issues. And for me, when I look at this, again, this comes down to funds, and I'm continually worried about the budget, just approve the budget and how we can afford to pay for everything that we need. I know this is earmarked as being paid for via ESSER funds. We do have another position of a part-time psychologist that's coming later on the agenda that I don't believe is being paid for by ESSER funds, or at least it's not called out as such. For me, I have to look at the two positions and weigh them, and I think I would be in favor of saving those resources, monetary resources, for helping with psychological help at the school.
Is that one gonna be paid for by ESSER fund? It's not marked that way.
To be determined. If we have enough, we don't know yet, who these people are gonna be that were hired. We will certainly use ESSER funds first to extinguish those before they expire, and anything left would be covered out of the general fund. I don't have a dollar figure for you just because we don't know, but let's say this part-time person was $35,000 a year. Even if we had to cover that all out of the general fund, it's not a significant impact to that, and we could do, things like lower the contingency fund by $35,000 to cover that cost. I do believe that at least a portion of it will be able to be covered by ESSER once we get these folks hired, but we won't really know that until we get to closer to like a working budget in the fall. Probably you have to hire these people already, so.
I appreciate the discussion also. I learned a lot as we're talking. From the elementary to the middle school, it was very informative, and I'm glad you guys came and told us. And we were able to ask questions and get direct answers instead of emailing and things like that. I thought it was a very good discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you all coming to the last meeting and explaining it, and to me, it makes, it made it more apparent to us that we really do need it, and that's why I need it.
So I will say I remember the conversation in the elementary school talking about how when they had one the last time, they really didn't know how to utilize that person. And I think, I can't remember who made the comment about how are we gonna guarantee that that person is utilized appropriately. I'm sure the job description is the same job description that we had before, and we're just reusing it, but was there any discussion after we met last week about making sure how that person is utilized appropriately?
I think if you hire the right person for the position, that's something that's largely addressed by the person in the driver's seat, so to speak. But I will say this is, as a district-wide position, I will be the person to make that hire. I'll be the person to supervise this person. And that's what you pay me to do. And I'm sure that occurs.
I think it was good also to have the good fifth grade, which you could see from the reports that were presented to us, that fifth grade still had some areas of growth as well.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Stacy. All in favor? 4. All opposed?
Aye.
1. Motion passes 4-1. Next is the contract, approval of the contract for occupational therapy services for 2022-2023 with Kristen D. Kelly. First by David. Discussions or questions? Is there a second? Second by Heather. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Next is approval of contract for physical therapy services for 2022-2023 through a Step Ahead Pediatric Therapy.
I'll make it.
First by Kyle. Discussions or questions? Is there a second? Second by Heather. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Next is approval of the 2022-2023 payroll dates. First by Kyle. Discussions or questions? Is there a second? Second by Heather. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Next is the approval of the 2023 Prom venue contract.
I make it.
First by
I'm
Heather.
I'm speaking out of turn.
Heather, okay. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to really read this, but this is just with the venue, correct?
Mhm.
Not with any of the vendors?
It's just 20, April 28th. That's what we do over here.
Okay, just making sure.
Deposit.
we're not Signing up with people that we're happy with.
No. Is there a second?
I'll make it.
Second by Kyle. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Next is approval for the additional part-time psychologist.
I'll make it.
First by David. Discussions or questions? Is there a second?
I'll make it.
Second by Kyle. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Next is adjournment. First by Heather. Discussions or questions? Is there a second?
I'll make it.
Second by Kyle. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. We are adjourned at 8:19.